Hey, this is Minute Book Reports, and I just finished reading Dracula by Bram Stoker. And uh, if you want to know like the summary of the story, I made a video earlier, just like the drawings, real quick on just the summary. But as I was reading this story, it made me think like about love, and it made me think about like how to find love and what Dracula, the book, sort of says about that. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video. So in the book Dracula, I think there are a couple of ways that love is demonstrated. So there's the romantic love, right, between like husband and wife, between Jonathan and Mina, and also between Lucy and Arthur. But there's also this friendship love that's actually more discussed, I think, in the book between like the group that goes after Dracula. So there's like a special friendship between Mina and Lucy, and between Dr. Seward and Lucy, and Dr. Van Helsing and Lucy, and Dr. Van Helsing and Mina. And so I think with all these different types of love in the story, it could be said that Dracula is sort of a love story, although I probably would consider it more like mystery or horror. So as I was reading, there was this really short passage in chapter 14, which by the way is probably my favorite chapter in the entire book. But this very short passage in chapter 14, it kind of talked about love. Maybe not how to find love per se, but I think it demonstrates how a person feels when they love someone and how they would describe that person when they really do love them and care about them. And so in this passage, Jonathan is describing Mina to Dr. Van Helsing when he asks, oh, like, you know, how's your wife? You know, how's that been going? So Jonathan replies, she is one of God's women, fashioned by his own hand to show us men and other women that there is a heaven where we can enter and that its light can be here on earth. So true, so sweet, so noble, so little an egoist, and that, let me tell you, is much in this age, so skeptical and selfish. And so when I read that statement, I was just totally blown away because I never heard anything like that, and I never heard anyone describe someone that they loved like that. You know, it was just incredible, the words. And so I kind of want to break down sort of the different parts of that phrase and just kind of like talk about it. And so the first part is kind of religious. It's she is one of God's women, and I think that's important to establish early on about Mina, especially when you're talking about someone that you love, because I think oftentimes when we talk about love, we think like we own the person, like they're ours, right? Like we own them, right? But then Jonathan describes her as belonging to like a god, right? Like a higher god. And this isn't like a religious discussion, but just know that the book does take place sort of in the context of like religion, and a lot of the characters do believe in God. And so I think that's where he's coming from. But Jonathan recognizes that Mina is not necessarily his, maybe to take care of now, but not like her, like she's his property. And I think that's very important when we talk about love. It's not like I own you and so you owe me now. It's more like he recognizes how special this woman is because she is God's daughter, I guess, in this case. So I think that's very important to recognize, and very different from how we would describe people that we would love. Like, oh yeah, like she's mine, right? That's, you know, maybe what would happen. But like, in this case, the way that he describes his wife now is just totally different from anything I've heard of. And I think it's really great, and I think that's why it stood out to me so much. And so continuing on with this religious sort of connotation is fashioned by his own hand. And that sort of made me think about that. I don't know if you know, like there's this NSYNC song called God Must Have Spent a Little More Time on You. And it sort of just talked about how like this girl, like clearly a lot went into her design, and not just the outer appearance but also like the inner workings of her and her personality. And so I know it's kind of weird that I know that song, but that was sort of what I grew up with. I think why that stood out to me so much was not just that she was his, or Mina was, I guess, God's daughter, God's property, but that she was created with intent. It wasn't just some random person, right? Again, this is within the context of this story. But she's not just some random person, but she was well crafted and well designed, and every part of her had some sort of intention, and that makes her that much more special. And it's just nice to see how someone can understand that about their partner. Okay, so the next part is to show us men and other women that there is a heaven where we can enter and that its light can be here on earth. And so from this phrase, we can see that Jonathan is sort of like uses Mina and her existence and her being with him as sort of reasoning for like an afterlife, right? Like for in heaven. And her existence and how amazing she is would be reason enough for both men, right? Because they would find her attractive and probably very interesting. It also shows, again, like the different types of love, right? There's the romantic type of love, but also like that friendship type of love. It's so interesting that you would have that much sort of invested in one person as sort of a justification, right, for an afterlife. And I think more importantly, not only is that attainable after everyone dies, right, when the world is over, but also that that light, whatever that afterlife may be, can be experienced here on earth because of someone like Mina and how great and amazing that she is. And so the last part reads, so true, so sweet, so noble, so little an egoist, and that is much in this age, so skeptical and selfish. So with that part of the phrase, I think Jonathan recognizes how special she is, especially compared to the rest of the culture and probably the rest of the women and men, I guess, at that time, where things were so like maybe science-based, or people were very, very selfish. They just cared about gaining things for themselves, and they didn't really care about other people. But you have this person here who clearly demonstrates that she puts love ahead of, or she utilizes love a lot better than a lot of other people, and it definitely shows, and she stands out for it because she acts that way and she demonstrates that. I don't think that Dracula is a love story in itself, but as I was reading it, especially when I read that phrase, it got me thinking about like what love is and how we describe people that we do love. I think how this helps in finding love is just a demonstration of how one person can describe another person that they are in love with, and at least in understanding how that can be described, I think it helps to find what love really is, or when we do find love, are we able to describe the person that we do love in similar types of ways? Again, is it that person is mine, or is it, wow, that person's really special, like they're not mine, but I'm able to be with them through some divine, exchange or something like that. And does this person's existence prove anything about like life? And again, this isn't a religious sort of thing. It's just, this person is so amazing, right? That amazingness, is that existence, does that tell me something about how this world works? And so lastly, it's like in this culture, in this time, does this person stand out, or is this person like everyone else? And sort of in just breaking down the way that it was written, I was like, wow, that is like amazing to be able to describe someone in that meaningful of way. It's not just, again, like she's beautiful or she's rich or she's smart or a lot of these sort of short and quick labels, but he really valued and treasured her. So I'm not really sure how this can apply to my life, but I thought it would just be amazing to be either described that way from someone else, or to be able to describe someone like that. And I think in looking at an example, even though it's fictional, like just to be able to look at an example of what maybe love is like when you describe them, and not being so selfish and not being so insecure and all these types of things. It has nothing really to do with the physical aspects, right? A lot of it has to do with the character, and a lot of it has to do with things outside that aren't so like tangible. And I don't know, it gets me sort of thinking about all these different things. Anyway, that's my thoughts on finding love in Dracula, sort of an unlikely source. But I just thought it was interesting, and that passage in chapter 14 really stood out. So if you have a chance, I definitely recommend to at least read that passage and maybe think about it, because it might sort of influence how you might go about finding love. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.